we are reaching the kind of the last phase of this webinar where we are drawing conclusions. Maybe just to open the floor to every one of you, and Francesco will join as well on the conclusions. I think if we look at the various projects, and not only the projects here, but some of the projects that are not being presented here, or many of the projects that are not being presented here, we've just seen here the highlights. I must conclude that there's an immense value in the technologies that we're developing. I mean, I'm seriously impressed, and I read a lot of research papers. The amount and the diversity of technologies that we're developing to turn Europe into and empower them as a digital sovereign space. I think is off for a good start, right? I think that would be my conclusion. But let's open the floor to others. Francesco, maybe you want to start off the drawing of conclusions. What would you say?
Yes. Okay. So from my point of view, of course, one of the topics that was touched during the discussion, which is very important, is the opening of data. And opening of data specifically, I mean, there is a kind of a line of projects of the European Commission that points towards the evaluation of the impact of opening data sets which are considered high-value data sets. For instance, data sets related to Earth observations, data sets related to company statistics, and so on and so forth. So the European Commission has basically understood and is kind of pushing the opening of data, especially public sector information or data, for instance, from cities, because as we said, artificial intelligence models are not very useful if we don't have data to train them. Yeah. And it is recognized also that all the paradigm of data space goes towards this direction. So the projects that want, for instance, to create a data spaces for a city from data, like usage, for instance, is one of the projects in which we are involved, that is creating data spaces in which cities will provide their own data, in particular data related to environment and data related to basically air quality, to traffic, to temperature, to heat bubbles. Mm-hmm. So this is very important for future project. And another thing that is very important that is pushed is the combination of satellite data with open data that are collected basically by cities. In fact, the satellite data combined with cities are able to provide support for decision making, especially for what concerns the management of green areas, or basically they can provide data for training smart cities based on AI.
Yeah. Just to make one point about this, making data available, and I think we're opening up another discussion, I think, by doing this, is so a data economy is about monetizing data, right? It's great that the European Union enforces the availability of open data sets, great. But I think what still needs to be solved, and I don't see anyone doing that, is how do I monetize if I have a data set? How do I monetize when an AI model is being trained with my data set? And do I make any money of that? Or how does it work, right? That mechanism is a very tricky one. And it would be great if we could launch some initiatives there that try to figure that out. I mean, it doesn't have to be the golden solution, but we need to somehow tackle the elephant in the room, right? So that would be my recommendation in that area. I'll go to some of the other participants here in the webinar to draw conclusions. What are some of the conclusions that you drew during this webinar? What struck you as, oh, wow, that I didn't realize that? and I'll go random. I'll go from Claudio, please.
Well, I'm happy about the outcome of this panel, because I see that there is a clear trend if I look to the projects which are ongoing and the ones which have started more recently or are about to start, of increasing the complexity and the ambition of what the European companies can achieve altogether. So I'm happy on that side. I'm a bit afraid on the other side, because this increasing complexity, it will be difficult to handle and to make it in practice. Sometimes I have the feeling that maybe addressing an easier question in an efficient manner would be somehow more worthwhile than addressing a complex issue with a complex solution that maybe will be difficult to replicate. But in any case, I see that there are a lot of synergies, and the different projects, they are all looking at the elephant from different angles, which gives me hope that it will be possible to at last take it down.
No, I fully agree. So the technological landscape is very broad and very deep. That creates complexity, but that's the beauty about doing this in a democratic way, right? And not by these large players that just take up all the market and everything. There's nothing left for other players. But yeah, to then make it coherent, move to some, to something useful for the whole European Union, that's going to be a challenge, absolutely. I go to Mark. What were your conclusions that you kind of drew during this webinar?
Yeah, well, I joined a little bit about what Claudio said, and I see a lot of intersection between the projects, because there is a lot of technologies that are, let's say, leveraged by many of the projects, maybe in a different way, but I think that are quite common. And there is another trend that I would like to highlight, is about decentralization. I mean, the idea of not keeping the AIs in the same place, but deploy them around to solve specific problems. I see it more or less in the big picture of all the projects. I think that it's very interesting. And the other aspect that I think it's vital, it's about data, as Francesco said. So I can ask a question to Francesco very quickly, or
yeah,
not?
sure. Yeah, of course.
Because when you try to predict or the floods and the fires, what's about the data? So you are using something historical data, how you can predict that, because an emergency is something that happens suddenly, and you utter the feedback you can, because it's a difficult use case, I think.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So we are using historical data for the prediction. Of course, basically the two pilots, at least on the forest fires, the ones that I know better, are in Sardinia, Italy, and in Aragon. So there is a long-term series, let's say, that can be used for this kind of analysis. But yes, we are using historical data that are combined basically with the data that will be collected through IoT in the forest, related to temperature, related to humidity, that also help to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe to comment a little bit on Mark, what I like about what you say, data is basically fluent, right? So fluent and we still call it edge to cloud continuum, but basically cloud is being referred to often as these big cloud providers, right? But actually it's all about round trip, right? Because it's from edge to edge. It's an end-to-end service. And I mean, in the cloud, nobody's living to be serviced. It's all about the edge. There's an edge device, there's another edge device. They collaborate together, or they feed on each other with data. So, and in that space, that's where we need to manage the data and the AI to have it transparent and trustworthy, and it needs to flow and shorten and make the round trip as efficient as possible. And I think I agree with you that is still something that needs more research, let's say, or more progression. But there's some technologies in the projects that are luckily looking at that. I go to Hugh Song. What are some of the conclusions you draw from this webinar?
I wouldn't say conclusion, but for myself, I'm glad to see that many of us in this room has interest in large language models. And I would see it as a potential joint point that if we keep discussing or talking on how large language models can be combined with the different AIs we already plan to use for the continuum, there will be interesting ideas popping up. And I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Alexandros, what would you draw as conclusions from this webinar?
I think that altogether somehow we bring together a kind of common tools that can be applied, such as data, such as AI, explainable and trustworthy AI, these cloud edge technologies, etc. And all these tools have, I think, some common pillars or objectives for all of us. That is to promote some kind of efficiency, agility, trustworthiness, and environmental friendliness to the whole compute continuum and in general, maybe in the software engineering landscape, let's say. So for me, this is a kind of a summary that we have common tools, we have common target in all these projects, and I think this is for me one of the conclusions for today, that there is this kind of alignment with a common target for all of us, and the same stuff and same toys, let's say, to play and try to deliver.
Yeah, and it's rich at the same time. We also try to do it, everybody tries to do it in a similar way, but also in a different way. So we can compare some of the solutions we are going to find out there, which I think is very great. Ruta, I'm going to come to you, please. What are some of the conclusions you draw from this webinar?
So first of all, it was good to hear. So some of the projects I already know because we work and try to cooperate a little bit more. Okay, like for instance, Cognifog. The others we have been in touch, but not so much. So it's good to understand the evolution and to see that we have common points towards decentralization, towards energy efficiency by design. So not just measures, but actually integration of mechanisms that can improve that. It's also good to see the different approaches, okay? The serverless approaches, looking into hardware, people focusing on LLMs, etc. I would say that what for the future, okay, what would be also interesting would be to understand how we all are doing experimentation. We spoke about data sets, which is absolutely the must, but there's more than that, right? So we are speaking about cloud edge IoT orchestration, and we are speaking about use cases that we all know are very hard to set, have problems when you go to the operational environments, etc. So it would be good to understand what can we do in Europe in terms of experimentation like we did before, and we are doing, okay, for routing with one lab, with Fed for Fire, and a lot of other things. So, and these we are missing in the CEI spectrum. So data sets, but also experimentation frameworks and test beds that we can use in large scale to mimic really what we have in the edge to cloud IoT continuum across the world.
Could you give so experimentation? In my understanding, I thought we're experimenting in these in the projects that we have. So what would you see then? What would you like to see more? Can you explain?
When we go to federated clusters, right, we are working with the internet structure, a complex system, multi-tier, autonomous systems. So what we call edge to cloud continuum needs an alignment, okay, to all these orchestration part. It's not just about nodes. It's actually about the internet as a complex system. And we have a few initiatives, okay, again, EdgeNet is one of them, okay, led by Leap6, so Timur Friedman, that possibly so started in a project, okay, now is a bit dormant, has around 40 to 50 nodes. Federated cluster operation is still not completely good. So we would need, in order really to understand if this orchestration can work, right? Because we are making it more flexible, but also more complex, we would need large scale test beds Like we have, for example, reference is one lab, okay, that we use for the routing and network management aspects, but we can't use for all these aspects of the orchestration in edge cloud IoT, okay, with AI and large models. So it would be great to try to understand if the projects could use something common and open.
Yeah, I understand. That requires real large investments, right? And really large projects. Yeah, it's true. I mean, if we want to be globally being seen as how must I say it, as a serious player, we need to build serious large infrastructures. Yeah, I fully agree. Who did I miss? Did I Marco? I missed you. No conclusions.
Yeah, I will be very quick now. First of all, thank for this for the organization of this webinar. Pretty useful. Also, see all different So we are working using the technologies like AI, cloud, but from different point of views. Also with different approach that can bring multiple output results, maybe good results for to have very European based also technologies, as I would say, and where multiple also actors can participate, as you said. So we don't have to rely only on very big players also in this kind of the sector. So the first thing about data, yes, that's important because we really need that in order to do experimentation if we would like to improve AI and the machine learning models. Without data, we cannot do so much. So that's a really important point. And we should understand how also do that, right? Because we have some public data set that we can use. That, for example, in Cognite, we have a partner set up some emulation environment where we can have some connectors to some public data set or some internal data set or synthetic data set that will be also very useful, right? Especially in the context, I don't know, of the orchestration of tasks where we are looking at some standard, for example, dimension like CPU memory, just to give. Other conclusion, well, I think we live in a very interesting period. Maybe AI, this will be something that we are going to deal with in the next years, and that allow us also in Europe to maybe to build very interesting technologies that can be used, for example, in the cloud edge continuum, and then used within different vertical segments. That could be, that would be very good, that we are going from experimentation to the usage of these technologies within the sectors, within business.
Thank you very much, Marco. I think one more thing that you mentioned it for the first time, actually, the connectors. I mean, they're fundamentally important, right? When we talk about interoperability, we need to have basically libraries of connectors that we can use that connect to data sets and all data spaces and all those tools.
Yeah, the point is also is that having every system can have its own, follow its own standards. So we have already some standardization in technologies. Look at the logs, we can have. But yeah, if we look at application specific, I don't know, metric, everyone has maybe his own. So we need also this interoperability that can come from even connectors or
Thank you.
Standard can help.
So looking at the time, we're 5 minutes late, but I think it was worth it to have these discussions, absolutely, in the presentations. So I would like to thank you all for your presence, for your presentations, for being here and having this lively discussion. Georgios?
Yes, I think you forgot me.
I forgot you. I was pressured for times. They were already calling me for another meeting, so I apologize.
That one sentence.
Your conclusions.
Of course, I totally agree with all the previous speakers about the need for data, the interoperability of our solutions, and of course the explosion of LLMs that have power and are a very trendy topic nowadays. But I'd like to highlight another aspect. What about exploitation of our solution? Of course, we are participating in different maturity levels regarding RIA or IA, but our solutions, how close are to the industry? What is the social and economic impact of this project related to AI? How close we are to have a solution that, of course, after some adaptation, can be truly adopted by an industry? Are we close enough, or here we are only doing research?
Thank you for making that point, Georgios, because it's always surprising how just before you close the door, somebody comes with the $1 million question, right? Which is, how close are we to exploitation and really pushing it into the market? And I fully agree on that. I once did a study in comparing the venture capital system in the US and in Europe, in stimulating startups and building stuff. We live in a different world in Europe. So we have to rely on large industries taking smaller companies by the hand, not eating them. Well, that happens also, but taking them by the hand. And the SMEs are the big companies of the future, and somehow we need to get them more involved in the game, give them more responsibility. And yes, many will fail, right? But it's the only way to get there. And I think start small. And I think we need the large companies to basically say, okay, small company, come here. I know a few other SMEs who are also a small SME who get the opportunity to work for these large companies and implement some of their technologies, that's the way to go. So thank you very much for that. With that final conclusion, I would like to close this webinar. I thank you again all for being here and spending your time. I thank Francesco also. I thank Martel for organizing this webinar and facilitating it. And of course, we thank the European Commission for financing our projects, and we hope to deliver more value now and in the future. Thank you all, and hope to see you more in the future. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.